That's Office from forward.
Yeah. I think we are getting live in 30 seconds, probably said.
Perfect.
It's going to be live in Twitter?
No, it's going to be live on YouTube.
YouTube, okay.
So let me just check if we're live. Okay, yeah, so we are live right now. Hi, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're located. So we are continuing with our series of these AMA sessions that are focused on crypto compliance and cybersecurity. Today we have Red Square and Sébastien Martin, who is CEO and co-founder of Red Square. And we also have Niko Demchuk, who is a lawyer and head compliance here at AMLBot. And my name is Vasily. I'm CEO of AMLBot. And today I will be hosting or leading this interesting discussion. So actually, the topic of today's discussion is related to Web3. And it's navigating the operational challenges of risk mitigation in Web3 use cases. And I think it's actually our first discussion about the compliance within the Web3 space, not only compliance, but overall mitigation of various challenges that are associated with that. Before we were talking mostly about CeFi, and now it will be a nice transition into the Web3 world. So I would like Sébastien to introduce himself, introduce his company, and tell us some interesting things about what he does.
Yeah, with pleasure. So first of all, thank you so much, AMLBot, for having us. And I'm indeed Sébastien Martin, CEO, co-founder of Red Square. I have a background in law. I studied French and German business law during 5 years in both countries, so in France and Germany. I have done various experiences in law firms, such as Clifford Chance, also BMH Avocat. Clifford Chance was in corporate M&A, BMH was in restructuring. I also worked for several startups, such as Robin, a legal tech in France, as head of public affairs. And also, after that, I joined EquiSafe as a strategic advisor. There, I worked on several, I would say, strategic regulatory topics, such as the financial agreement within the IMF, so the French Market Authority, and also various other topics related to one of the first ICO validated by also the French Market Authority. Afterwards, I joined a company providing with advice, so as consultant, and I work for several top-tier projects, Dogami, DAOmaker, Orion Protocol, Kakubi, Fluss Finance, and various others. And after that, I have noticed that there was a lack of advice regarding the risk mitigation, because the risk mitigation, you know, it's a very crucial topic for also the big corporates. On you know, once they join and they want to do a Web3 use case, of course, the first I would say reflex is to say, look, we have this risk in cyber, we have this risk in compliance, this risk in reputation, and we need someone which can help us overcoming these challenges. And that's why I co-created Red Square. I have 2 other partners, Thomas and Esteban. Esteban is an hacker, Thomas is more like a business profile, and we are strategic and exclusive partner on Web3 of one of the leading European economic intelligence companies. And we co-develop a joint offer covering the whole spectrum of risk in Web3. And I'm really glad to discuss it today with you more, I would say, deeper.
Great, thank you. Niko, I know that you already participated in the other webinars, but maybe some people didn't watch it, so maybe you can also give a brief intro. about your background.
Sure. So I'm Niko Demchuk, and I'm a lawyer and head of consulting at AMLBot. My past experience includes also law firms, Big Four, consulting, and I was also a lawyer at the top-tier centralized cryptocurrency exchange. Now I joined the AMLBot, and here working on making the crypto world more secure and bringing crypto hygiene into the crypto industry.
Yeah, crypto hygiene is a very interesting term that we like to use to tell people that they need to be cautious who they transacting with, for example. Just one thing before we jump to the questions, I wanted to mention that Red Square, they're also creating a league for safety in the Web3 space within France, and AMLBot is joining this league. So Martin, maybe you can give us like brief thing what the League for Safety will be doing in the sector.
Exactly. So we initiate a league indeed dedicated to safety within the Web3 space, because we have seen that once there is I would say a scam situation, a fraud situation, or any I would say a close situation, the first I would say pain point for victims is to ask themselves, but who can help me being in this situation? So we have seen that we needed to structure a network which can help these victims in these situations, and to I would say take by the hand and help them, of course, to identify what's happened with the funds and what can they do after being hacked or scammed. After discussions also, we have seen that the need was also a bit larger, and we have seen that the challenges around safety are, I would say, more general than just managing scam and fraud. And we decided to create a league for the whole safety topics. Of course, this idea of network will be the first, I would say, purpose, but there will be also a second purpose to identify and build standards of safety within the Web3 space, because it's a bit, I would say, a need, and also it's the topic of today. Every crypto Web3 projects ask themselves, but are my processes the right one? Is what I do good and correct? And they need to have more, operational reflex. And that's what we want to enable through this league, which will basically be an association. We are finalizing the creation this month. Dominique Pénin of Kramer Levin is on board. There will be the managing director of France of Binance. There will be, of course, AMLBot. There will be Morpholabs, represented by Merlin Égalité, and various other companies, such as Fabien Frechter of Vivendi. So that's also good to have a corporate with us, because it also shows that, they are aware of these challenges, especially Vivendi, because it's a very big group in the entertainment. So you can imagine dealing with fraud with content. Of course, it's a tremendous challenge for them. And here it's good because we see that NFTs is also providing with solutions to all the growth of the generative AI, and that's a very also interesting topic.
Great, thank you. And I think it's so important, especially in preventing fraud within the cryptocurrency world, not even in Web3, but even like in the traditional Web2 crypto, because when someone loses money or someone steals money from you in the fiat world, you go to police or to the regulator, and there is a setup process on how to deal with such a process. Nowadays, when someone steals cryptocurrency from you, or if you send it to some scam, or you go on the phishing website and you lose all your crypto. Usually, and actually, unfortunately, so far in the most of the cases, law enforcement agencies do not even know themselves how to proceed in such cases, and creating a leak where people can have this clarity and understanding how to proceed in such cases is very crucial. All right, so let's jump straight to our agenda today. So I think the first and most important thing is to actually define Web3, because it's a very new, relatively new concept, and not many people understand what it actually is. So Sébastien, let's start with you. How do you define Web3, and why do you think it's important?
I have a very broad definition of Web3, which is a bit always challenged by, well, I would say in my discussions with, I would say, they are the purists, the one who are like a maximalist, the one which are, so I will, that's my definition. My definition is of Web3 is every use case based on using the blockchain technology belongs to the Web3 space, and because on what does this Web3 space enable, because I think it's really crucial for me to define also the use cases and what does it bring concretely. To me, it's a new internet of value and of monetization, which means that in the past, there was some situation in which content on some transactions couldn't be monetized, because there was the challenge of the foundation on the basis of this transaction on a technological level, which was not enabling, a monetization or transfer or sending something, etc. To me, the Web3 space is completely challenging this and bringing solution to this problem. That's why we see the NFT, another important word. NFT is I would say a way to catch a creation, which can be, for example, a picture, which can be, or even a moment, like of a video, or any other, I would say, cultural creation, and sell it or transfer it very fast. On this, of course, was not, I would say, enabled in the past. And that's why I think it's a bit, having that in mind, we see that it's a very, I would say, important revolution that we are, I would say, facing, and that's yeah, my definition of Web3.
Yeah, like you said, that it's a basically new method of transferring value and creating value as well. Niko, what about you? How would you define it?
Mm-hmm. By defining Web3, I would do 2 steps back and also define what was Web 1 and Web 2, and then we would understand what is Web3. I made such a comparison when I was reading a lot about Web3 and Metaverse and DeFi protocols, what it is. I like it, so I think it's going to be interesting for our listeners as well. Now, when we are talking about what was Web 1, yes, in 90s, when just web appeared, it was more about reading. So we had just some website belonging to some companies, and then we were producing some information. And the user of the web could only read information, and basically that's it, nothing more. Then we had Web 2. Web 2 means that the user could actually interact in the different platforms because of the appearance of social networks like Facebook, like Twitter. So there were many platforms that give the right to user to produce and generate contents and interact with other people, interact with companies, etc. So that's where we are now. And we have it very popular, different companies and services and so on. But we are on the edge of becoming to Web 3. And what is Web 3? So Web 1 is read, Web 2 is read and write, and Web 3 is read, write, and own. So what does it mean, own? It means basically that you, when, for example, in Web 2, you're just a user of some platform, but you can be easily banned. Your materials can be easily censored, and you cannot do anything about this. So when we are talking about Web 3, you are the creator and you are also the owner of what you are creating or what you are receiving. Very simple example when it comes to cryptocurrency. You don't really need a bank to interact with a platform. You don't need to have accounts, so it will be a third party who has your money. You could set up your own cold wallet and do transfer and receive transfer. Also about in-game items. Now, if you are playing some online games and you buy something inside the games, you can use this only in the games. If the games disappear, whatever you bought over there also disappear. But in a Web 3 world, the NFTs that you are receiving or tokens that you are receiving in the online games actually belongs to you. They're saved on the blockchain or on the Web3 wallets, and you can use them not only in this games. If the games disappear, it still stays with you, and you can maybe use it for some other services or for some other DeFi protocols, etc. So this is for me Web3. Read, write, and own. But when talking more precisely and not abstractively like I'm talking right now, I would say that the elements of Web3 is, of course, digitalization. That's why we are talking about DeFi protocols. We are talking about DAO, of course, cryptocurrency, blockchain, NFTs. This is all for me, Web3.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, in general, Web3 is a new thing that has not slightly, like I would say, even drastically different concepts than before, such as decentralization. You own your own things, you are more in control. You don't rely as much on some centralized authorities, but as we know, the new things bring new challenges. So what do you think are the key operational challenges in securing and managing within the Web3 use cases? Sébastien, what do you think?
I would say the first point, I will speak from, I would say, Web 2 stakeholder perspective, in order that also for the person hearing us can also, I would say, see the challenges particularly specific to Web 3. The first one is that there is a new reality, right? So there is going into Web 3, you have a crypto, maybe you have or at least you need to have crypto for example, doing even some smart contract deployment, all these basic, I would say, operational matters. On this, of course, need to be secured, especially for corporates. So in B2B, it's very important that the assets of the company are secured. And for this, there are, of course, the wallet management, which is really a key point. And I would say it's the starting point to take into consideration. Of course, the next step is the governance, because once you set up this wallet, of course, you need to adapt the governance, and the governance needs to, I would say, take it into consideration, and there needs to be also a new consensus within the company, having in mind that these funds, if there is any transaction, of course, it needs to be accepted, and of course, the auditors, etc., need to understand how it is basically done. Then there is, of course, the point regarding the smart contracts. We always see that regarding the assets, it is, I would say, understood that it needs to be secured. Whereas regarding the smart contracts, it's a bit more complicated to for projects to understand, oh, but I need to secure the governance over the smart contracts. Which means that if, for example, tomorrow a company wants to, for example, change the end address of the wallets, this need of course to the action to change it needs of course to be secured. So that's of course it needs also a dedicated governance, and of course it needs a process. The last point is one of the last points is regarding the cybersecurity. Of course, it's mostly based on code, which means that the code needs, of course, to be secured, and for this need to be audited. And of course, here there are various companies providing auditing. We are, for example, also doing, because it's a part of our activity. On the last point, maybe it's securing interactions with third parties. On here, of course, the point of the wallet management comes in, of the wallet screening comes in. Of course, solutions like AMLBot can be deployed. And also this need, I would say, internal processes, which means that if this situation is screened, what does it bring to? We see a bit of lack of sometimes maturity regarding, oh, but if this situation appears, there might be also this consequence. Maybe sometimes there is a lack between connecting, the dots on the I would say situation to a consequence. On the last point is regarding as there is many scams, fraud, etc. If you are, for example, an investor or any project, for example, which on board, like for example, everyday partners, clients, doing listing, doing investments, of course, the due diligence is very key. Here, there is 2 points to be, or 3 to be taken into consideration. Off-chain, on-chain, and within the off-chain, I add, of course, OSINT on UMINT. I think to me it's key to understand, especially if you're doing a very big investment, to understand that who is around the project. Is there a company? Are they skilled for what they say to do? And what's maybe the traction already? And that's good, because on the blockchain, it can be read, and of course, for this you need to use tools, which of course will simplify the work, at least will enable you to manage a high volume of transactions. So that's a bit for my side.
Yeah, thank you. It kind of brought an idea, not idea, it's kind of a fact that in crypto, or maybe almost in every emerging technology, we kind of learn the hard way, and especially with the regulation always lagging behind. Like in 2017-18, we had centralized exchanges being hacked. So they had a security problem, and then they had a problem of money laundering because they didn't have adequate procedures mostly at that time. Now in the previous bull market in 2020, 2021, now it was the side of the Web3 mostly, and smart contracts like bridges, DEXs being hacked, exploited, and a lot of money laundering going on. And then as a result, Tornado Cash got sanctioned, for example. So all of those problems that you described, they unfortunately become evident in the kind of real time. Because it's a kind of a Wild West. But I think every time we learn something and we improve the processes, and at some point when the market will be more mature, I think most of those challenges will be overcome. All right, Niko, do you have some interesting things to add?
I think Sebastian already mentioned a lot of operational challenges, mostly on the technical and cybersecurity side. I could only mention also there is a challenge when it comes to Web3 that there is no legal clarity. So we do not really have any regulations and laws focusing on DeFi, on NFTs. We only have some initiatives from different countries. I will talk about this a bit later. But this could also bring some challenges, especially when there is some cases where supervisory authority expects from those DeFi protocols that are involved in providing crypto financial services to comply with some AML, KYC, and any other regulations. But on the other hand, there is no such a regulation. So for those businesses, it might be a big headache, actually, what they need to do and how to address this challenge.
Yeah. And there is always this question, and especially within the DeFi, like who's responsible if it's decentralized, right? Okay, so the next two questions would be more specific to Niko and Sebastian because they touch mostly their areas of expertise. But of course, anyone can then add regarding the topic. So the first question would be to Niko. So actually, in what ways do traditional risk management frameworks need to be adapted or redesigned to address the unique challenges posed by Web3? And specifically, since it's your area of expertise, specifically within the anti-money laundering and CTF measures.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I would start my answer saying that AML, KYC, when it comes to Web3, DeFi protocol, is actually a key point. Even in the US, they had the DeFi illicit risk assessment done by the US Treasury, so a governmental body. And in their studies, they also gave some recommendations. And all those recommendations were actually focusing on how to make that DeFi needs to be supervised, that they need to have some clear guidance how to comply with AML KYC requirements, etc. So we see that this is actually the problem, especially how different how legislators from different countries look at it. And it's true that when it comes to DeFi, it's not that easy to address this because the law itself or the internal procedures itself, like now in the companies, if you are financial institutions, you also need to have your own internal procedure. How do you do identification, verification of the client, transaction monitoring? And basically you do it on the front end of your service, my meaning when the customer accesses your service through the website, or if he downloads the application, then he goes through the onboarding process. Basically everything is done on the front end. But when it comes to Web3, it's mostly, we are talking about deployment of smart contracts. So all those DeFi protocols mainly built on the smart contracts. And that is something unique and something particular for Web3 sector. So I think that this whole process, how should we redesign our approach of KYC AML in Web3, it should be also included in the smart contracts itself, meaning there should be something in the code where all the users who would love to use this, for example, DeFi protocol, would need to pass some AML or KYC test. And once it passes, it's actually allowed to use it. That's how we can mitigate some risks, because now I'm not aware about any DeFi protocols that do it. And of course, if you don't identify your customers, there is a big risk that sanctioned individuals can easily use your protocols for their own financial benefit. So that's, I think, something interesting about Web3. It should not only be the written procedure, but the lawyers should actively participate in the discussion with a technical person in order to create the code which is embedded in the smart contracts and that makes KYC process of the users compulsory.
Yeah, it's very interesting what you said, because when you're accessing, like, I don't know, a website of a bank, and they don't want you to access it, they can simply restrict your IP address. But in Web3, there is a smart contract, and you don't need even a browser to access it. If you know how to code, you can access the smart contract using the scripts. And this is actually how, for example, North Korean terrorist organizations are able to launder the funds through the DeFi, because they know how to use it. And even if their IP addresses are banned, and all the VPN thing can also actually be banned, but you cannot kind of ban DeFi, and it's accessible to everyone. So on one hand, it's beautiful because it allows everyone to be included in the financial system. And on the other hand, it brings the risk of money laundering and all of the things that Niko mentioned. Sebastian, do you have? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, I would also add here one fact is that of course, if we add some code in the smart contracts and we'll make the process of KYC obligatory, it would mean that we would actually need someone who would be doing the identification and verification of the customer. And this is also something new that is not happening in nowadays conservative financial services, because in the Web3, it would mean that the DeFi protocol would need to rely on some third parties, and it's called oracles. So there should be some oracles that would be providing such data or such information that this customer is not sanctioned, that his ID is not forged, is not fake, etc. And that will be also some interaction between the smart contracts and, of course, some physical words through via oracles.
Yeah,
I totally agree. I totally agree with the fact that I think oracles will be used for sure. I think it's to me it's the good I would say approach. So I'm totally fine with this. On the other hand, I think that indeed it DeFi enables to access the financial system, but in the financial system you cannot, for example, open a bank account if you're less than 18, 21, depending the country, because there is this and this risk. There is educational risk, there is a risk, of course, of losing the money. And there is also the risk towards the parents if, for example, the child stole the money. And in DeFi, this also perspective, or this, I would say, fact, it's pretty challenging also to apply it. And I think that, it's a very, I would say, tremendous challenge because, of course, DeFi is like pretty interesting in terms of use cases. So to me, there is no doubt that it has a future, but we cannot also, on the other hand, say it's a code on, I cannot do anything and I cannot apply what the rules say. And when I'm speaking to DeFi protocol, that's always a bit the way, they speak about what they do. And for example, if there is someone, that we know as, for example, forbidden, they say, yeah, but what can I do? It's decentralized, it's code. And also there is also the purist saying, yeah, but I cannot, I would say, control it. It's the free net, etc. So, this, at the end of the day, I think there are very important criteria to take into consideration. Of course, to me, the safety I think we cannot say that it's a matter of code and we cannot apply it. Safety is always, needs to be applied. And also, I think the protection, especially of, young child, applies. And maybe there will be this proof of I know there is some solutions also working also on decentralized identity. And I think here there will be, I'm sure that there is a solution also to make sure that once the person is validated in terms of ID, we are sure that that's the person having the control over the effective control over the wallet once they do the transaction. And I think also here it's an important point. And at the moment, it's a pretty complicated, I would say, topic that not many, I would say, use.
Yeah, good point. And I already saw that we had a question about it. So I think in the end of the discussion, I will address it and see what actually we are building to do so. Okay, so the next question is for Sébastien. What do you think? What measures should organizations take in order to protect the infrastructure of the Web3 technologies from the cyber threats?
That's a good point. So of course, the first point, we always use assessment of the situation. So the starting point is to understand what am I building. So what's how many smart contracts, which are the interactions with third parties, with third parties, and also to identify the risk between my centralized, I would say, infrastructure, because if you have servers, of course, you need to protect them, and the decentralized part, which is for example, more the smart contracts, but it can be also oracles, etc. So I think this needs to be assessed, and that's the basis of everything, because if the assessment is not done or is not well done, then every measures, cannot be used. So safety on cybersecurity and risk mitigation in general, it's always based on facts. And that's what always I'm telling to my clients, we have to only to see the facts and deploy solutions to that. So first step, and then of course, once we assess, there is I would say, mitigating part. On this is to see, based on this situation, what can I do? So it can be through securing, for example, the access to any critical change. Of course, it's to protect from mistake, because it can happen. Also to happen any intentional, I would say, bad willness. And also to make sure that the funds will not be used by third parties, if they have access to for example, they are manipulating the governance. And that's very important. And of course, to have always external perspective over the code, because of course you cannot develop and audit at the same time. Also on this, I think we can see some situations in which it can be also a bit improved, the split between dev and audit. I think these principles need to be respected. And this is very basic, it's not I would say a hard point, but sometimes with the schedules, with the this willingness to go fast on the market, then the safety, I would say, considerations are a bit becoming less, and this need to be avoided.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point when the technology is evolving so fast, and in the startup environment, where you do in 1 week what a traditional organization will do in maybe 1 month. Usually, unfortunately, there is a lack of governance and the lack of set up procedures that they might put some processes and make them slower, but in the end of the day, they can help to prevent very big issues, like in the case of the FTX, when most of the things were just done and no one took responsibility, no one put in check what was going on. So it's a very crucial kind of sometimes to step back and to see what is going on. I think before we go to the audience questions, we can do one more question that we wanted to discuss. And I think Sébastien has already started talking on it, but maybe we can just expand. So what practical actions or strategies can you share for mitigating the risks in Web3? And that can be anything. That can be like a compliance risk, security risk, regulatory risk. So anything that you want to share. Niko, you can start.
That's an interesting question. What practical steps you can do? I mentioned before about practical measure, especially to mitigate the risk that if you are the creator of a DeFi protocol or I don't know NFT platform, you don't want that your services being used by some criminals or people being sanctioned. Then of course you would need to address this risk. How you can do it? In practical terms, I think there should be some companies, at least I know one, just called Purify, and they actually help DeFi protocols to comply with the KYC requirements, where they provide data about the customer. Only data, meaning that the customer is not sanctioned, the customer is not PEP, the customer has a true ID, it's not fake, etc. So I think maybe if you would also search a bit more, there are some also companies that are already providing some practical solution also for cybersecurity or any other aspect of Web3. Since there is no regulation, as I mentioned before, very clear, I think this is a room for people, for owners of Web3 projects to think out of the box. How do they actually can mitigate all those regulatory security risks? I think for now, regulation is not even needed, to be honest, because the sector is only in infantry, it's only appearing, and bringing strict regulation at the very beginning could kill innovation. But the main focus should be on cybersecurity. This is a fact that we have a lot of hacks against different DeFi protocols or NFT platforms, and this somehow needs to be addressed. It happened before with also centralized exchanges. If you will look at the statistics provided by different company, for example, chain analysis, when they show that the hacking of cryptocurrencies that has a criminal that are coming from hacking as a criminal activity. Some years ago, it were mostly centralized exchanges that were hacked, but because of the new regulation, because of the practice, because of the standards, market needs, they improved so much. So now we hardly ever hear that any centralized exchange is hacked. Now everything is going to Web3 participant because it's only developing. There are many vulnerabilities, and that's how it needs to be addressed. From my point of view, the main one is actually cybersecurity, and then I would say AML KYC.
Great. Sébastien, what is your viewpoint?
I think indeed, so the regulation is now mostly, to me, the regulation is needed. Why? Because the institutionals are entering into the space, and of course, also the volume deployed will not be the same. I take an example. Lastly, so of course there is the debate between with BlackRock and ETF. There is in France the fact that Société Générale has a dedicated subsidiary for Web3, which name is Forge. And there is also KCIS, which lastly received the VISP registration in France. So of course, if KCIS starts, for example, building a use case, and of course, selling the product to clients, of course, the risk are not the same. And that's why I think we need to have an approach based on the, also on the stakeholders, because indeed, if you're like a startup, it will be overkill to, I would say, oblige that you have like tremendous obligations. So of course, this is totally, I would say, the point. And regarding this in a big institutions, entering into the Web space, what is mostly needed? Of course, we need clarity regarding the qualification. I think it's the basis of everything. It can be qualification of the token. It can be qualification of the NFT. Is it fungible, non-fungible? It's sometimes hard to see the difference. And also, of course, all the compliance requirements based on this qualification. What does what's the consequence of having an NFT? What's the consequence of having a utility or security? And on this, I think it's still a bit unclear for all my clients. I see what's exactly needs to be done. But de facto, there is good, I would say, best practices that appear, at least to have a wallet screening. Now it's becoming, I would say, more and more obvious, even if sometimes it's not taken into consideration from big corporates from beginning that they will need to spend, I don't know how much for wallet screening, and to take it into consideration, I would say, early, because of course you need then to make sure that your team can use it. And sometimes, we have this feeling that, we need to fulfill the box, but we cannot use it effectively. So that's for my points. I think we need to be very clear about the activities, what is sold on the market, what are the consequences of this being sold, and also, but my teams will need to deploy this new reality, or are they ready or not? And that's I would say, the very big challenges that we have.
Great. Yeah. So thank you guys for this nice discussion. So we have some questions from the audience, and I already selected some of them. So the first one was, how does AMLBot handle Web3 issues? And actually, Niko was already mentioning about Purify. So Purify is our second company that actually is kind of an extension of AMLBot to the DeFi space. And basically within Purify, in order to address the issue of compliance and risk mitigation, but at the same time, trying to follow the narrative of DeFi, because in DeFi, everything is based on the smart contracts. It's very different from CeFi, where you have front end and use APIs. We basically build a framework that, as Niko was saying, it's a piece of code that integrates to a smart contract. So it can be almost any smart contract, but mostly makes sense for like financial related services such as decentralized exchanges, lending protocols, and so on and so forth. And by integrating Purify, the projects can enforce certain compliance rules for the users or wallets, because in DeFi, user is basically a wallet that tries to interact with a smart contract. So those wallets, they need to fulfill a rule that the smart contract wants them to fulfill. And this relates to the risk score of the wallet. So this can potentially help to mitigate the risk of money laundering, where if you set up a certain risk threshold, you can eliminate users that use mixers or that use dark market or have some stolen crypto in their wallets. And then you can also enforce KYC rules. Again, this can help you to prevent users from the sanctioned jurisdictions, for example, from using your service. And the third one is actually you can customize all of those rules based on the transaction amounts. So again, there is no clear regulations. So you can build the different compliance rules. For example, you will not ask for KYC for the smaller transactions, but if someone wants to swap like $1 million to your protocol, maybe again, you can mitigate the risk by asking them to provide the KYC details. So I kind of answered this question myself. So the next question is, it's also a very interesting question. What are the exposures and risks associated with using Web3 in collecting and storing user personal data? And I would actually expand on this question, like who is actually responsible for storing users' data when you have a DAO, for example? I don't know who wants to try this challenge.
It depends the jurisdiction, of course, where you establish, or the US says that it's not because you're DAO that, for example, no laws apply. I think this is an important point, and of course there is this principle in which says that once you know where you're based on the operational center of an activity, then I would say says the jurisdiction that regulates the activity. I think this is so. First, this is a starting point. Of course, it depends about the jurisdiction, and the data, of course, is is regulated. In Europe, we have the GDPR, and of course, like we have also national authorities making sure that the data is not I would say violated, and this is an important point. So there is a lot of chance that a DAO will be also responsible of the data of the client. I see, like I don't know, maybe we will have some litigation, coming in the coming, I would say, years that will very clarify this by written. That's my, I would say, a positive feeling. And regarding also the data, it's a good point, because yesterday we discovered also like a CRM on-chain, which is pretty interesting. And that's amazing indeed, the quantity of data, because you directly have access to the, to the pocket of consumers. Of course, it's very interesting data for brands, for NFT collections, because you can target, you can direct exchange through NFTs, etc. But the thing is that it's not my conception also of this decentralized space. Of course, it's you do not know that it's Sébastien Martin, having this wallet, but you can maybe through indirect information reconnect with me. So at the end of the day, there is a question. The question is this was Web3 wants? This kind of situation in which also you can access so many information about me, about each other. That's that's a bit my perspective.
When you mentioned DAO and the litigation process, I tried to imagine who would go to the court if the DAO gets sued. and if they will have enough spaces for all of the DAO participants to come. But yeah, it's a different.
They will take an
very interesting.
example. Yeah, they will take an example on, then make sure that the others understand from this example that they need to comply. So maybe that will be the approach.
Okay, Niko, do you have anything to add to this topic?
Of course, topic of personal data and blockchain is difficult to be clear here. There are many open questions. Maybe I would add here only that it's not really possible so far to exchange real personal data on a blockchain. Usually a blockchain is basically a sequence of numbers and words. But maybe with the development of Web3, it will be a case where each user would be responsible for his own data. So it wouldn't be the case where the user would need to send this data to some other companies, and the companies will hold it. Maybe it would be a digital identity of the users, and he would be merely given access to projects that he wants to connect with. So the project can have the access to this data, check the user, but the data would be stored by the user. The user would be in full ownership and responsibility of his data. He could disconnect the access to his data. He could give access to his data, etc. So let's see how it all will be developed. This might be the solution where it wouldn't be such a big issue if a user will be the one who actually stores and control his data.
Yeah, that's a good point to change the concept of who should control or store the data. We have like 5 minutes left, maybe just last question. And it's actually also an interesting question. I thought about it even before our webinar. So we call DeFi decentralized, but in fact, many of the protocols or even blockchains, especially the ones that work on the proof of stake concept, they have their nodes, and those nodes, they're hosted somewhere, right? So they usually hosted on some cloud-based platform like Google Cloud or Amazon servers. And I read somewhere, don't quote me on that, but that like a very high percentage of the Ethereum nodes are hosted with Amazon or Google Cloud. So then kind of it hinders the whole concept of being decentralized. Yes, you have so many nodes, but if they're hosted on a cloud computer that is ultimately controlled by some company, it is also a risk, and it's a risk of Web3. So how would you mitigate the source of the risk, if it's even possible to mitigate? I don't know who wants to start. Maybe it's like a philosophical question. I don't know.
I think there is the decentralized cloud also coming in. We have seen yesterday, for example, a startup working precisely on this, I would say, pain point. So I think indeed there is a market on decentralized cloud. Will also make it it should make it less expensive than centralized cloud. And it also answers this pain points indeed at the end of the day of the centralization of the decentralization. Yeah, there are some projects working on this. I don't know what is the maturity on the pain points is also to make sure that they are even themselves decentralized. I'm sure there might be some solutions coming.
Yeah, so I guess the right solution would be to decentralize the clouds essentially somehow. All right. Any last words or comments you guys want to share before we wrap it up? Good.
Thanks a lot for
Not
the
from my
invitation.
side.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you very much, both. I think it was very good and very fulfilling and very in-depth going webinar where we discussed many concepts and addressed the Web3 for the first time. So thank you, Sebastian. We will be keeping updated our community about the legal safety. How is it going on? Maybe we will organize some events related to that. Thank you, Niko, as always. And I will see you guys in the next webinar.
Thank you, Vasil.